Whether you're new to RC or you've been around a while, this could be for you. What's going on, everyone? Today we've got the brand new Traxxas TRX4M here. Now this is Traxxas' most recent release at this time, and it's their 1/18th scale four-wheel drive off-road platform. And not to spoil it, but this little tabletop size crawler is going to be an excellent addition to your collection. I got to see this little truck about a month ago at the NERSA show, which is kind of a dealer only, it's an industry show. And they had this on display where it was initially launched, and I got to hold it, take a look at it, and see not only the truck, but the whole line of option parts that they also have ready to release alongside of it. At the time of release, they've got two style options available. One is this 2021 style Bronco, and the second is a Land Rover Defender. Now these match their larger 1/10 scale offerings that Traxxas has, but now they've just scaled them down into this size. And I say scaled down because this little truck truly feels like it's built more like a 1/10 scale car than traditionally smaller scale trucks have. I was really impressed with it the first time I saw it, and gonna try my best to show you the details of why. Getting into the big picture details first. Like I said, it's being offered in two different styles. I got the Bronco version, as you can see. It's being offered in 4 colors though, so you can get it in red, white, blue, or black. And it is a hard body or an injection molded body. It's a more rigid plastic than a lot of RC vehicles that have a polycarbonate or kind of a more flexible type plastic. With the hard molded plastic body, generally comes a little bit more detail along with it, and I think that's no exception here. This body is multiple pieces, so the white part of the body is one piece, the top is separate, and obviously the glass is separate as well. Along with that, the fender flares, bumpers, those are all separate pieces, injection molded and then fastened to the main body structure. Small scale has been getting super popular over the last 2 or 3 years at least, but the most popular scale has typically been seen as 24th scale. However, this isn't much larger than those 1/24 scales that you may be already familiar with. This wheelbase is around 6 inches. I measured this one at about 153 millimeters. So the wheelbase is just slightly longer than some models, but right in line with others. The overall track width, or the width between the outsides of these tires, is right about 121 or 122 millimeters, which is roughly 4 3/4 inches. And if you wanted to calculate the actual scale in comparison to the wheelbase of a real Bronco, you'd be closer to about 19 and 19.2 to 1 scale. This body also has details like side mirrors, a roof rack, a spare tire cover back there. There is no tire in there, it's just a hard molded plastic cover. Door handles, and some of the other details that are synonymous with the new style Bronco. Body comes off with the clipless system. So there's one clip in the front and one in the back. You just reach under and pull those, and the body wants to come off nice and easily. Now it comes off easily, but it secures really well. So it goes on just as easy as it comes off, and it's not coming off. You're on the trail or your desk, whatever it may be, it's on there to stay. Underneath of the body itself, you can see how all the structure is bolted on. You can also see that there is front and rear headlight and taillight buckets, so you can add lights, and we'll get to that detail a little bit later. Out of the box, there isn't lights in either of those positions, but there is in the front bumper. Setting the body off to the side, the base chassis that's underneath is where I was most impressed. Now this item's of course going to be marketed a lot towards people who are new, getting in, don't necessarily know, they want to walk into a hobby shop and just get something that's, everything is there. They don't have to do a lot of thinking. But we all know that enthusiasts are also a big part of the market, and I think that enthusiasts are going to be ones that appreciate a lot of this even more, just based on the type of construction that went into this little model. First thing I do when I walk up to an RC truck is generally kind of reach up and just cycle the suspension. I even just do it when it's sitting on the bench and I'm talking about it. And the suspension on this feels excellent, especially for the scale of this. And that's because the shocks that come on these, much larger diameter, a little bit longer, and they're actually fluid filled. But again, they feel so nice and so smooth. It doesn't have that friction shock feel. The springs feel good. The damping is right where it feels like it should be out of the box. The shocks don't put the ride height of this car too tall. It just looks appropriate when it's all sitting there. The suspension is a true 4-link front and rear, meaning that there's 4 individual separate links that connect each axle to the chassis. Oftentimes you'll see an upper link that is a Y shape. It's actually one piece and it kind of tees together. This one, true 4-link all the way around. The links are plastic, but they've got a good amount of rigidity, and Traxxas has already developed aluminum aftermarket links that they're going to have available for this as well. Along with that 4-link suspension setup, you also have a pretty interesting front style steering. The servo is mounted onto the axle, but it's flipped in a way where the servo output is facing down and the back of the servo traditionally is facing up. This allows for a decent sized servo to be placed between the frame rails so that everything else can be kept nice and low. The end of the servo horn attaches directly to the tie rod, which is this link that connects each side of the steering axle. Out of the box, this truck gets 45 degrees of steering from the included CV style axles. So the axles are nice and smooth as well. Typically we see dog bone style steering in a truck like this. The axles are a typical straight axle, so no portal box. The axles themselves are styled very familiarly off of the TRX4 axles, the larger 1/10 scale version. So a lot of the things that you see here are just reminiscent of its bigger brother. And at the show, when I saw this first, Traxxas also highlighted a number of different aftermarket option parts that they've got ready for the axles. Mounted at the ends of the axles are these licensed BFG tires and the Bronco style wheels. The BFG tires only come on the Bronco version. The Defender version gets the Canyon tires, which is Traxxas's own tread pattern. You see that released on a lot of the TRX4s. Moving up to the chassis of this truck, it's a nice beefy C-channel chassis with super heavy duty looking shock mounts, nice cross braces all around. Part of what is so impressive of this truck is just how rigid and how well built the chassis is. Getting into the middle of this chassis, that's where you see the motor, the transmission, and the battery setup. Now the motor is a 180 size motor. So comparing this to most 24 scales, that's a good size motor, something that's gonna have a little bit more torque, and this is an 87 turn version of it. The transmission that is mounted to is a little bit larger, a little bit beefier, puts the motor up a little bit higher than a lot of 24 scale options, but you have more torque coming out of that 180 size motor. So for durability reasons, likely a good choice. They also showed that they're going to have pre-built transmissions available to drop right in here. And those didn't include just replacement versions of the one that you see here, but they also have a blue transmission, and that is to signify that it's made for a different speed. They're going to have high-speed transmissions and crawling transmissions. So rather than just buying gear sets and getting in there and fiddling with tiny gears, you're going to buy a complete pro-built transmission and just swap it in there. You want more speed? Buy this one, throw it in. You need to replace something that went wrong in the one that you've got, just buy a pro-built one and drop it in as well. It does make it simple for those that are buying this that aren't necessarily looking for a huge project to get into to replace something. I get it for that reason. Behind the transmission, you see the battery tray. And the battery tray uses this super handy rubber strap to hold the battery in. It comes with a 750 milliamp 2S Traxxas LiPo. Now this is one of the Power Cell ID batteries, so it has some intelligence in it as well. It uses a proprietary plug, which Traxxas does on all of its models, and Traxxas may use this plug on some of its other like Trax type models, but those I haven't dealt with personally in quite a while. So this is the first time that I'm actually handling this plug in person. So yes, Traxxas does use a proprietary plug, but they also provide you a USB style charger, so you don't need anything to get this going. And 750 milliamps is a good size capacity for a truck like this. You're gonna get really significant runtime. So with an extra battery or two, you could have yourself a ton of fun with almost no downtime. To install the battery, you just drop it in the tray and then just kind of stretch that rubber strap over. It's not overly rigid, so it doesn't take a ton of force. A kid would be able to do it with proper supervision if they're under the age of 14, whatever the box says. Be able to put that on there, and then the battery plugs right into the ECM. not ESC, the ECM, the electronic control module here on the back of the chassis. Now, it is the ESC, but it is also the receiver, and it's also the light kit, and not just your everyday light kit. But first off, yes, we plugged it in there. There is no on-off switch. You just plug the battery in and it's powered on. You unplug the battery to power it off. And I know that because it says it on the ESC. You get the standard Traxxas 2-channel remote, so you don't get a smaller version or anything like that. Nice to see as well. These are fairly comfortable and definitely durable radios. The low speed control on this is pretty good, and it's got nice torque as well. It's able to pull up and just, without having to really give it a ton of throttle, you're able to do what you think it should. Not having a super jerky throttle response on a small scale truck like this definitely makes the driving experience much more enjoyable. Now, getting to the lights, as I mentioned, it does have LEDs here in the bumper already, and they're nice and bright. They put out light a good distance. They're not just there to, light up the bumper. They actually throw some light. But the body does have headlight buckets and taillight buckets. There's an extra port here on the ECM. And what I was told is that you're basically able to just buy this additional string and you're going to plug it right into that control module, wire it into there, and then you've got your full light set. And I believe that the light kit has a little bit more functionality than just powering them up. I believe that it reacts to throttle and brake, but I guess we'll have to see when that becomes available before we get into that too much. In the end, the big question is always, is it worth the price? And these are super competitively priced at $150. So that's a steal of a deal for when you see these in person, how well they're put together. Whether you're new to the small scale market or you've got a huge collection of them, I don't think that anybody who picks one of these things up is going to be disappointed that they did so. Everything about it is just really well done. And for those of you that are a little bit more versed in working on your RCs, customizing things like that, few things that I'd like to point out to those of you. One thing is that the hardware is a little bit larger sized. You're going to see mainly like 1.5 millimeter drivers used on most things. I don't know that you're going to see any of the super small driver tips needed at all. This also uses like the industry standard 1.0 inch wheel and 7 millimeter hexes. So tons of aftermarket wheels and tires are already going to be available for this. They didn't change that up to the point where you weren't going to be able to find options. These tires are about 55 millimeters tall if you want a reference for tire size and options. You could fit a slightly larger tire in there without getting into any of the body work basically as is. All of my driving time on the TRX4M has basically happened indoors at this point. They had an indoor track at the nurses show, and then this one has only been driven inside. Now, I think that's where these things are going to spend a lot of their time. Make a little course across your desk, your workbench, through the living room, wherever it may be. But they're definitely not gonna be afraid of the outdoors either. And that's my plan. I'm gonna go take this thing out onto the rocks where I like to crawl most. But I'll post that video up in a few days. Would I buy it? Yes. Would I recommend that you buy it? I'd say that if you're interested in this, that it's got more value in it than the price tag reflects. I think it's a great deal at $150. If you're interested in buying one, you can go into your local Traxxas dealer to shop and pre-order for one. Otherwise, I believe you can buy them online at Traxxas.com as well. I'll put links to where you can find your local dealer, as well as links to the Traxxas page where you should also be able to purchase. It's exciting to see Traxxas enter this area. They're not quick to follow the areas that look like they're going to be popular. They sit back, but when they do release something, oftentimes it's a winner. So I'm going to enjoy this. I hope that you do as well. If you have any questions or comments about the new TRX4M, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe so you see the running footage here in the next couple of days. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.